This week's parsha is Parshas Vayera, and the beginning of the parsha is talking about how Vayera Hashem appeared to Avram after he had his bris milah. Obviously, he wasn't feeling so well. He had his bris milah at 99. So Hashem came to visit him, as we call that in Hebrew, Bikur Cholim, to visit the sick, which is a big mitzvah in Judaism. Hashem was visiting him, and then during the visit, Avram noticed that there were three people. It says three people. Really, it was angels that had specific jobs to do to tell Avram that he'll have a child, another child, Yitzchak, or to go destroy Sodom and Amor, whatever their missions were. There were these three angels that were coming, and Avram, but they looked like people, and Avram saw them. So it says that Hashem, I'm going to quote you what Avram told Hashem. It says, my Lord, if I find favor in your eyes, please pass not away from your servant. Meaning, in other words, he told Hashem, can you wait a few minutes? I got business to take care of. I got to welcome these guests. And we know, in general, Avraham Avinu, one of his big mitzvahs that he did, was involved with was hachnasas orchim, which means taking in guests, hosting guests. It says he purposely set up his tent in a place, where there wasn't a lot of people. It was in the middle of the path, where people would travel. And whenever he would see people, he would offer them food and drink. Eventually, they would, at the end, he would get them to thank Hashem for the food. But he was in the middle of a desert or some sort of area. And it says that day was really, really hot. And because it was really hot, Avram didn't have any guests because no one was traveling. Now with cars it's a little different, but you could imagine they say it's a hurricane or something. No one goes to shul. It's a heat wave. So no one went out. No one was traveling, especially those days without any real protection. So he was very sad, even though it was the third day after his bris, which is a very harsh, a lot of pain, etc. He still wanted guests. So he was sitting outside his tent, and that's where God was visiting him. And then he finally saw people, which were really angels. He saw them. So he told Hashem, can you wait a few minutes? Let me go. Let me go take care of these guests, which is something very interesting. Hashem, as she's talking to Hashem, he say, "Oh, Hashem, I have more important things to do. Can you wait for me?" Imagine you have an appointment with a really top investor or psychologist, or people where you pay a lot for their time, and you're like, can you wait? I'll get back to you. That's something that's pretty wild. But what this does is it teaches us about the importance of hosting guests and taking care of guests, which we'll get to. That will be the topic for today. The idea of hosting guests. Just as the story goes on, it says, "Tell them wash your feet. Let me get you food, etc." And even though they were angels, it says that they made as if they were eating. They were angels; they didn't need to eat. They made as if they were eating. Why? Because it says whenever you go to a place, you have to adapt the customs of that specific place. You can't move. Imagine a British person moves to America and says, "I'm only doing things the British way," and it's driving everyone nuts. It's a thing that when you go to a place, it's mentioned even in the Talmud. You go to a place, you go in its way. You go in its customs. You don't need to stand out. We're not talking about for mitzvahs wise. We're talking about just in customs. So the angels, they're from heaven. They don't eat food, but when they came to the world to do whatever job these angels had, they made as if they were eating. At least they played along with Avram, with the whole hosting that he was doing for them. And it says eventually, they said, "Where's Sarah? We need to tell her that she's going to have a child. This time next year or whatever." And the rest of the story, how they went to destroy Sodom and Amorah after that, and Avram pleaded that they should be spared, etc. Okay, so that's this week's parsha. Again, it's called Parshas Vayera, which talks about God appearing to Avram after his bris milah to visit the sick, so to speak, Bikur Cholim, and Avram, cut the meeting short so he can go take care of the angels, take care of guests. Now, from this story, again, we learn out the importance and the mitzvah of hachnasas archim, of hosting guests. I want to read to you the Rambam, the Maimonides, which talks about this mitzvah. So I'm going to try to share my screen. In the past, I have had trouble that when I share my screen, I can't talk. So maybe I'll just put it up. If that's what happens again, then I'll just put it up there for a minute or two, 30 seconds, whatever. You can read it, and then we'll discuss this Maimonides. So here we go. Let me make it big. Let me make it just English. Okay, now I am going to share the screen. Share the screen. Okay. I hope you can see it. Are you able to hear me? Oh, really cool. So you're able to hear me as I'm sharing this. Amazing. Okay. You see here, make it as big as possible. So here, let's this it's in the chat, in the section about visiting mourners, like paying a shiva visit. But then it's branches out talking about other good deeds, other deeds of kindness, actions of kindness that we have in Judaism. So I'll read it out to you. It says here, it's a positive commandment of rabbinic origin to visit the sick, comfort mourners, to appear for a funeral, prepare a bride, accompany guests, attend to all the needs of a burial, carry a corpse on one's shoulders, walk before the bier, mourn, dig a grave, and bury the dead. And also to bring joy to a bride and groom and help them in all their needs. These are the deeds of kindness that one carries out with his person that have no limit. Meaning, you carry out with your person, with your actual body, it has no limit. You can do endless amount of this. There's no set amount you have to do. There's no maximum amount you have to do, or you can't do more. This is and there's no limit to these mitzvahs. Okay, and it says the next paragraph. This is part of the mitzvah. The haftal l'reach kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. And whatever you do for yourself, whatever you want people to do for you, you should do for other people. Okay. Now, number 2, the reward one receives for accompanying guests is greater than all the others. This is a statute which Abraham, our patriarch, instituted, and the path of kindness which he would follow. He would feed wayfarers, provide them with drink, and accompany them. Showing hospitality for guests surpasses receiving the divine presence. Yeah, it's more important to show hospitality to guests than to, so to speak with Hashem, be with Hashem, as it says in Genesis in this week's parasha. And he saw, and behold, there were 3 people. Meaning, when Hashem was visiting Avram, Avram looked and he saw there were 3 people, which were the 3 angels, and he took them in. It continues, accompanying them is greater than showing them hospitality. Our sages said, whoever does not accompany them is considered as if he shed blood. Now, so you see already is this idea that part of hosting guests is to also make sure to accompany them as they're leaving. That's what it means when it says accompany them. It means when after you have a guest for Shabbos or whatever, you have them for a few days. After the guests are finished and they're leaving, you have a mitzvah to accompany those guests as they're leaving. And the basic idea is that, especially in those days, it's not so safe. Traveling was not so safe. So you don't want to just leave your guests, out there in the open. So you accompany them a certain amount of the trip, and then you go back home. That's the accompany. So what it's saying here is that accompanying the guests is greater than showing them hospitality. I'm reading the end of number 2. Our sages said, whoever does not accompany them, whoever does not accompany the guests is considered as if he shed blood. Why is it considered as if he shed blood? Because, like I said, the idea of accompanying a guest as they are leaving your house is to protect them, so as they be there with them, so they shouldn't be in as much danger. And if, God forbid, someone does get hurt or killed because of not being accompanied, that's as if he shed blood. That's the idea. And then he goes even to more extreme. With this, I'll finish this part. It says, number 3, we compel people to accompany wayfarers in the same manner we compel them to give charity. It's the same significance. the court would prepare agents to accompany people who travel from place to place. And if the court, if they were lax in this matter, is considered as if they shed blood. Even a person who accompanies a colleague for 4 cubits will receive a great reward. Okay, and then it goes through the how far you have to accompany whoever you're accompanying. Okay, so now we're gonna have some questions on this Maimonides here. So if you look, let's go back to number 1, where he's talking about a lot of different mitzvahs we do. They're called gemilat chasadim, acts of kindness that we do to fellow Jews, and it gives a whole list. Now, and if you look on the second line, it says one of them is to accompany guests. Yeah, in between helping weddings and burials, it says to accompany guests. Now, that's the only thing it mentions about guests. It doesn't say to host them, give them food, wash them, let them sleep at your house. It doesn't say anything like that. The only thing it says is accompany guests. So the question is why? Why does Maimonides only write here the idea of accompanying a guest? He should write the whole mitzvah of called hachnasas orchim, taking in guests. And that's and this question is even stronger. If you look, what does he say in the next halacha, in the next law, in number 2? It says the reward one receives for accompanying guests is greater than of all others. And where do we learn this from? This is a statute which Abraham, our patriarch, instituted. Yeah, and the path of kindness which he would follow. What does it say? What would he do with the guests? It says he would feed wayfarers. He would provide them with drink, accompany them. The source for this, we say showing hospitality for guests or passes receiving the divine presence. Like we read in our parsha that he saw and behold there were 3 people. So we see that the Maimonides holds the mitzvah of having guests is not just accompanying them as they leave, but obviously giving them food, etc., like we see from Abraham. So why does Maimonides not say that? Why does he write specifically in number 1? He writes accompany guests. Why does he write only accompany guests and not the rest of the aspect of this mitzvah of hosting guests? Now, some people try to say, look at the rest of the mitzvah talking about all things that you do with your actual body. Giving food is more of a monetary thing, or hosting them. It's not necessarily something you do with your actual body. Accompanying them, you walk with your body. The truth is, if you look, it says prepare a bride for a wedding. How do you prepare a bride for a wedding? That's something it's a more of a monetary thing. So you can't say that we're only talking about mitzvahs that you do with your body. Okay, again, if you look at number 2, you see that Maimonides doesn't really say that there's other parts of the mitzvah that you see from the story of Abraham. That's question number 1. Again, the question number 1 is why does Maimonides only mention accompanying the guest and not the rest of the mitzvah? Question number 2. Where does Maimonides give the source for the mitzvah for that? It's more important to take care of your guests, to show hospitality to your guests, than even hosting the divine presence. Like we started off, for those that join later, we started off this week's parsha talks about how God appeared to Abraham, and I was visiting him because he just had his bris milah and he was sick. But Abraham, in the middle of, so to speak, talking to God, hosting God, he said, "Hey God, wait a second. I see 3 people in the distance. They're going to need hosting. So let me take care of them. I'll get back to you." So we learn from this, like Maimonides writes here in the end of number 2, that showing hospitality for guests surpasses receiving divine presence, as it says. And he saw, and behold, there were 3 people. He saw, and behold, there were 3 people. So the question is like this: if you look in the Talmud, which most of Maimonides is sourced obviously in the Talmud itself. If you look in the Talmud, then you'll see where's the source. Where's the source for this mitzvah? The source of this mitzvah is not from those words where he saw 3 people. Rather, it's the words where he tells Hashem, again, I'll quote it to you, "My Lord, if I find favor in your eyes, please pass not away from your servant. Please don't leave. I know I'm gonna go take care of these people, but have some patience. I'll be back." Telling Hashem, wait for me, which shows how big hosting guests are. even to tell, even if God's visiting you, so to speak, you say, wait, let me take care of these guests. It's more important. That's the natural place to learn how important the mitzvah of hosting guests is. But Maimonides doesn't use that verse, which the Talmud uses that verse, and he quotes his own verse from our parsha, the part where he says he saw three people. What? First of all, how is that even a source? He saw three people. What does that have to do with hosting guests? And obviously the stronger question is, why does he change from what the Talmud writes? Why does he think that he's, so to speak, better than the Talmud? He has a better source. Now, I want to give a disclaimer. Maimonides in general, a lot of times will give his own source, only if the source is clearer. Like he'll say, I'm going to give a clearer source than the Talmud. It's more direct. Now, the reasons why the Talmud didn't bring that source, that's for another discussion. Each time it has its own reason. It might be only according to one opinion, this, that, whatever. But the point is that Maimonides sometimes will give his own source if it's more clear. But in our case, obviously, it's not more clear. So and even if you want to say, it's because the fact that he noticed them, even though he was talking to Hashem, he noticed them, that already tells you that's not more clear. That might be a source. You could say these words, he saw three people, tells you something. He took notice of them, even though he was in God's presence. But still, it's not more clear than where he literally told Hashem, wait, wait for me, let me go take care of these guests. That's the clearest you can get. And there's another way people try to answer that there's two opinions of if who was visiting Avraham, Hashem, or really it was angels. And therefore you could say that if it was angels, then by Avraham telling them, wait for me, it wasn't telling Hashem wait for me, he was telling angels wait for me. So then it wouldn't be a good source. That's why he needs his own source. But Maimonides himself clearly says that it was talking to Hashem, not angels, because like later on, like he writes clearly in number 2 that it was that it's more like how hosting hospitality is more important than divine presence, as you see in the story of Abraham. So obviously it wasn't angels that Avram was in the presence of, rather it was Hashem himself. And he told Hashem, wait for me so I can take care of these guests. Okay. Now my last question is like this, and this I think is the most powerful of all the questions. I mentioned before in passing, but I wanted to make sure you knew this, that the guests that Avram hosted were actually angels, right? Now, like I said, each angel had a specific job God was sending him to do, whether it was tell Sarah she'll have a child, or destroy Sodom and Amorah, or save Lot and his wife. That's what their jobs were, but they were angels. They just looked like people. So when it says that Avram fed them food, and it goes into all this, the Torah goes into the details of what he made for them, matzahs and this and that, meat. It says that, it doesn't say in the Torah itself, but it's written that in other places that the angels didn't actually eat. They're angels. They don't eat. They don't need food. So it says they made as if they were eating. The question, what do you mean he fed them food? They're angels. So it says they made as if they were eating. That's one of the answers. I remember once hearing a whole song going on and on about a story, getting everyone to laugh, how like someone did, maybe they were dairy or they didn't like the meatballs, I don't know, and like they had to stick the meat, they didn't want to embarrass the host, so like they stuck the meatballs in their shirt to make as if they ate the meatballs. And it's like the guy was going on a whole story how it's burning hot inside and he's trying to whatever. I don't remember all the details, just stuck in my head the meatballs in the guy's shirt. But the angels did some trick like that, like you go to a kino, as if you ate it, whatever they did, and they made as if they ate the food, but they did not actually eat the food. Which what is that? What am I trying to get at? Is that we're learning this whole big mitzvah about feeding guests, taking care of guests, etc., taking care of their needs from here. But the truth is that Avram did no mitzvah here. There was no mitzvah performed. He didn't actually take care of them. They weren't lacking anything. So nothing was accomplished here. So first of all, again, how do we learn the mitzvah of hosting guests from here if the mitzvah actually wasn't even performed here? But second of all, not only it wasn't performed, it ends up coming out there was a shtickle, a little bit of a sin here. Avram left Hashem's presence to to do a non-mitzvah. So maybe it was a mistake, fine, but that's not something we want to learn from. It's not something that can actually be a source for law, for a source for an actual law, that you have the obligation to take care of guests. There was no mitzvah actually performed. So how can the story be this big source of hosting guests? Okay. So I think that's the most powerful question of the story. And the answer is going to be interesting. So in general, when you have, again, we're talking about, like when I showed you the Maimonides, this piece over here, it's talking about all the mitzvahs that are part of Gemilas Chasadim, of kind acts that you can do for fellow Jews. Visiting mourners, Shiva house, helping bury people, helping people with the weddings, coming to the wedding, bringing joy to the bride and groom, hosting guests, a bunch of things we read here in this chapter. All these mitzvahs, the mitzvah is always about the outcome. The mitzvah is always about what's accomplished through what you did. Meaning, let's keep a very simple case. The mitzvah tzedakah. Someone needs money. You got them the money. They have the money. So what's the mitzvah here? Now they have the money that they need. Their lack, their void is filled. That's what the mitzvah is about. Very naturally, so it makes sense. The mitzvah is about accomplishing what's lacking, filling what's lacking, the end, the result. That's what the mitzvah is all about. So much so to the extreme. There's that it says, the Rabbi actually mentioned this in his sermon sometime this year. If someone has a wallet or money, whatever, and the money fell out of his pocket, and therefore what happened was he lost it and he never got this money again. But what happened? What happened to the actual money? Some poor person comes, picks up the money, and whatever the law is, he's allowed to keep it because there is no sign, etc. Whatever the specifics are, and because of that, it says that counts as a mitzvah for the person that dropped the money. Again, even though you didn't want to give the charity, you wanted your money that's in your wallet. That wasn't your plan. But what happened? The money dropped, and now a poor person got that money. So could that count as a mitzvah? Because you gave it was, so to speak, as charity for the person, but you didn't give it. You didn't do the action of the charity, so to speak. But it's written that it counts as an actual mitzvah. Why does it count as an actual mitzvah? Because the end result that the mitzvah that you want to, the end result of tzedakah, the goal of tzedakah to help a poor person, that was accomplished, that happened. You can't say that was lacking, and therefore you get the merit of a mitzvah when you drop, when you unintentionally give charity. Okay, and that makes sense again, because I'm just trying to bring out the idea that all these mitzvahs that are in the general category of gemilas chasadim, of committing kind acts, are all about the result. They're all about the conclusion, what happens because of what was done. It's not so much about the action; it's more about the result. So it doesn't make a difference how it happens, as long as it happens. So what we're going to try to introduce here is that when it comes to the mitzvah of hosting guests, it's a little different. When it comes to the mitzvah of hosting guests, it's not only about the end result, it's mainly about how you do it, how you host your guests. Is it something that you make the guests feel like it's a schlep and you're not really interested, but you're doing it anyway, or whatever? Is that why you're doing it? Or no, you actually care. The person needs hosting, and you actually care about that the person needs it, the person's lack. So you fill it for them, and you're happy to do it, and you're trying to fill their void. That is part of the mitzvah of hosting. That's what we want to try to introduce here. The novelty, what the Maimonides is teaching us, is that, again, that the not only the end result, but how you do it, how you go about it, is very much part of the mitzvah, or in a certain sense, is the main part of the mitzvah. And how do you see that? Where is that brought out the most? Where do you see that clearly? that is when it comes to the part of hosting, like that we discussed, of accompanying them, of walking with and traveling with them a little bit as they leave your home, wherever the amount is, like the Maimonides wrote in number 3. But whatever the amount is, when you accompany them, when you're leaving with them over there, what's happening? There's no specific lack. Someone needs to sleep, you give a bed. Someone needs food, you give them food. Someone needs a drink, you give them a drink. That's all clear. That's all. There's a lack. There's a void, and you're filling that. There's a need, and you're filling that. But when it comes to accompanying, there's nothing really missing here. The only reason why you're accompanying them is because you care. You care about them. You don't want them to be alone or whatever. That's where you can tell the difference between, just the end result, just filling up, or actually caring and showing and being emotionally involved in what you're doing. So, in other words, we asked our question on the first question we had on Maimonides is why does he only mention accompanying and not all the other aspects of hosting guests? And the answer we're saying is because not that the other parts of hosting are not part of the mitzvah. Of course, they're part of the mitzvah. But where do you see the mitzvah? Where do you see this specific mitzvah of hosting the most? You see it when it comes to accompanying. Again, because the mitzvah of hosting is not just about filling a need, but it's more about the care that you show. So that answers that question. Again, why does the Rambam talk about only accompanying? Because that illustrates this idea that what's the mitzvah really about? Caring, actually caring, showing that care. It's not as much about filling the needs as it is about showing the care to your guests. That's number one. But obviously, all other parts are part of the mitzvah. It's just not the. In other words, when you feed, when you give the drink, when you give them the bed, show that you care. Yeah, meaning this care is not only expressed in accompanying, you should express it in all the aspects. Where you see the clearest is by accompanying, but it permeates all the aspects of this mitzvah. Now, that answers that question. The other question about that, where's the source that having guests is so important. So Maimonides, we said he quotes it specifically from the verse where it says, "Oh, he noticed the 3 people." Why does he bring it from there specifically, and not from the part where Abraham tells Hashem, "Wait for me, let me go take care of the guests"? That's seemingly the clearest. Why does he use this verse? Because this is the verse where you see clearly that that Avram actually cared, that this mitzvah was coming from care, not just filling a void. If it's just filling a need, okay, he sees people traveling on a very hot day, they're very thirsty, so he gives them drinks, gives them food, he hosts them. But from the fact that when he was with Hashem, he noticed these 3 people, he cared to take notice of them. That's really what the mitzvah is about. It shows the care that he had. That's why Maimonides used specifically this part of our Torah portion to be the source for this mitzvah, because it's about the care more than it is about the actual action. And the last part, the last question that we dealt with, that we asked about the angels, that they were angels, so there was no need that was filled, there was no mitzvah done, there was nothing accomplished here because they didn't need food or drink. They're angels. So what's the answer? Very clear based on what we said. The mitzvah here is not, at least mostly not about, the main part of the mitzvah is not about filling the need for your guests. The mitzvah is about showing care. And that he did. Maybe you're right, he didn't fill any needs because the angels don't have any of those needs, food, drink. But what he did do is show the care. And they felt that care. That's what that is there. And that's what the main mitzvah of hosting guests is. Like we said, it's not about filling the needs as much as about showing the care. It's about what you're doing more than the end result. It's about how you're doing it. And therefore, okay, maybe there was no end result in the story, meaning there was no needs filled. The angels didn't actually eat. But did Avram show the care to guests? Yes. That was there. And that's why this is a good source for this mitzvah. And even to bring it out a little clearer, there actually was something accomplished here. Maybe, again, there was no food eaten or anything, but the fact that someone cared for them, and was worried about them, that it could be, at least angels do appreciate that. Again, maybe they don't need food and stuff, but they appreciate someone going out of their way to care for them. Especially the angels which are on this lower level angels where they can actually, look like human beings, in this world and do specific missions here. So that it could be he did not, there was an actual end result, so to speak. The mitzvah is to care, and they should feel the care, and that they felt, even though there was no actual food. Just a story that Rabbi Shiner mentioned this morning in Shul, and you might have heard this story before. I'm not a good storyteller, but I'll just try to give the point that there was someone, he ended up in town, he got stuck for Shabbos, whatever, and he needed someone to stay by. And it was last second, whatever. And he didn't know what to do. He knocks on the door, where do you think I can go for Shabbos? I just need a roof over my head, a proper Jewish Shabbos. So he said, go to this guy, he's the hoster, so to speak. He's the person you should go to. Turn to him, his name is Yankel or whatever, go to him and he'll take care of you. So he goes to the guy's door, knocks on his door, and the person answers the door. He says, "Oh, can I stay for you for Shabbos? I'm sorry, last second, whatever." So the person says, "Sure, you can stay by me. I'll take care of you. There's one thing, I charge $250 for Shabbos." So they're like, what? You're hosting, you're charging? This is weird. But he was desperate, and it was almost Shabbos, and he had no other options. So he said, "Fine, whatever. Yeah, I'll pay you $250." But he was like, "This is weird. What was up with that?" Okay, fine. He brings him into his house. He shows him the guest room. He says, "Here, this is your room. Feel free to take any towel that you want here." And he takes him to the kitchen, and he opens the fridge and says, "Oh, you're our guest. Feel free to take anything from the refrigerator. You see any food you want that's on the stove or in the oven, whatever. Anything that you're in the mood of, go for it, take it." And you can imagine, usually a guest would be like, "Oh, at least I remember getting a host. You're like, I'm not really gonna take anything from the fridge. I'm not really just gonna make myself comfortable in this room. It's like it's their daughter's room, and she moved out for Shabbos just to host me or whatever. Whatever it is." But in this story, he was like, "I'm paying for this. It's not like it makes sense. I should be able to go to the fridge and take whatever I want." It's like, he wakes up at 12 a.m. He goes, cuts some of the cake. He gets some. He pulls out some bartenura wine that was left from the meal, which he liked. By the meal itself, he didn't feel bad. Taking an extra piece of meat, whatever. Like, not it doesn't have to be in a snobby way. It's just like this was he's paying for it. He's entitled. So he made himself comfortable. He reads the newspaper on the couch, as if it's a hotel lobby, whatever. I'm gonna drag out the story, but the point is, okay. Then Shabbos is over. Okay, he has to go catch his flight now. Whatever, Shabbos is over. Time to move on. And as he's on his way out, he pulls out $250 cash, and he hands it to his host and says, "Here's the $250." And the host says, like, "Well, what are you doing?" I was like, "What are you doing? What's this $250 for? Why are you giving me $250? So he said, "What do you mean? We had a deal. I'm staying here. I need to give you $250. So here's the $250. The person doesn't. Oh, no. You keep your $250. I just told you before Shabbos that it's going to cost $250. So you make yourself comfortable. Be at home. You should feel comfortable, do whatever you want. That's why I told you that. Now I'm not actually going to charge you $250. It was just to let you feel comfortable. But here's your $250. Take it, go, gesundheit, go, go home, get back to your family, whatever." And that teaches us, that this story really brings out the point that we're saying in this class. That then when it comes to the mitzvah of hosting guests, what my Maimonides is teaching us is that more than it's about filling needs, is about showing care. And they should feel that care. And therefore, and that's what that in the story, that's what you see, obviously. You want the person to feel taken care of, you should feel comfortable. That's the main thing, not just that he actually checked the box of hosting. That answers all the questions that we had about why is he only talking about accompanying the guests, because accompanying them, that brings out this point the most. There's no specific lack that you're filling here, no specific need that you're filling here when you accompany them as they leave your house. It's just that you care, so you're accompanying them. That's what it really shows, and that's brought out throughout the answer to all the other questions, and especially the fact that there was no actual mitzvah here. There was no food that they ate, no drink that they actually drink. So what's the mitzvah here of hosting guests? Abraham left Hashem to go host them. He didn't even do anything. So of course he did something. He cared for them. He showed care for them, and that's the main aspect when it comes to hosting guests. That's what Maimonides is teaching us here. And that's what Maimonides says. We learned from this week's parsha. Yeah, we hosting guests is so important that we even tell God, wait a bit. I got more important things to take care of. And even if it's just about making a guest feel at home, feel comfortable, feel that someone cares for them. And with that, I hope we take the lesson from this, obviously, how important hosting people and making them feel comfortable is. So that is what we discussed again. So it's not just like I'm trying to inspire here, but it's more about for the class, the Talmud topic aspect of the class. It's that, again, we would think the mitzvah is about the outcome, like all other mitzvahs of kindness, especially like tzedakah, like charity. But the truth is, no, this mitzvah is mainly about the care, how you do the mitzvah, not as much about the outcome. I don't know if you have any questions. Feel free to. That would be the time. Or in general, always feel free to ask questions in the class. I realize before every class, I should say, anyone have any questions, feel free, right in the chat box. If it's a smaller group, you could unmute yourself and ask. But at least now.
So, just one short question. So if I give a charity and the person I give the money to doesn't use it, so it doesn't count as a mitzvah?
If they need the money and you gave it to them and they took the money, then that's the mitzvah. What they use it for, that's another story. When
you give to somebody that you don't know, so you don't know if they really need it.
That's a good question. Actually, I'm dealing with this right now. Some random person called me. I don't know who they are, and they're stranded, this, that, fine. I gave them some money, but now I got the follow-up. So now it's like there's when it comes to charity, there is a certain in general, I would want to say, oh no, we just trust everyone and you give, but there is a certain I can't tell it to you right now. I would have to look it up, but there is a certain authentication you should do. Like I'm saying, even in halacha, even in law, it talks about it. It's known that on Purim, there's a thing. It says whoever sticks out their hand on Purim, you give them. You don't ask questions. You don't look into it. You just give on Purim specifically.
But actually, if someone puts his hand to get something, it's because he needs it. So we assume here that everyone who's asking for money or who's receiving it, it's because they need it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair.
No, what I'm saying is on Purim, even though you could.
I know. Yeah, I got that.
It could be the guy's a little sketchy or whatever. You still give, but during the rest of the year, I'm trying to show is that it's not the case necessarily. I don't know. I can't get into specifics right now. I don't have them on top of my head, but I do know that there is a certain. I'm not saying not to give until you go through a process, but at a certain point, there is a certain level of. Process or whatever you want to make sure. We don't. In other words, I say all I'm trying to say is we don't say someone asks, just give. As long as you're trying to do the right thing, so that's it. That's enough. I think to a certain point that is the case, but at a certain point it's not anymore. And there is a certain idea of making sure.
Okay, thank you.
And but like I said, I'm dealing with this right now. I actually have to figure out what I should do.
Right. Let us know.
Because obviously there's like a lot of always sketchy details or something. What exactly why why are you calling me? Whatever. You're a certain amount. You have people besides whatever. But yeah. Anyways,
Thank you,
good
Rabbi.
to see everyone. Looking forward to seeing you again next time. Remember, it's a Tani class Monday night. We started a new course on Tuesday nights at 7 about we're talking about Israel. Something very interesting. Tomorrow night we're going to talk about preemptive strikes. Yeah, like we had during the 6-Day War. That was the decisive, most important thing that Israel did was the fact that they did a preemptive strike on Egypt, saved many lives, Egyptian lives, obviously Israeli lives. Just to take out the planes and keep it simple. But how does that work according to Torah law, etc.? Can you just go ahead and strike someone, etc.? So we'll talk about that. And obviously in the future, how should Israel look at these things? So that's what we're going to talk about on Tuesday night. So looking forward to seeing you any one of these classes. Alrighty, I'm going to have a good day. Good to
Thank
see
you.